Today, we are continuing a series called Christmas Invitation. In fact, we're wrapping up a series called Christmas Invitation that we started last week, talking about Christmas, but more importantly saying, hey, if you were going to throw a Christmas party, who would you invite? More importantly, who would you not invite? That was kind of interesting, right? And the reason why we said that is we went back and we took a look at the first Christmas last week, and we said, who did God invite to the birth of his son? And better yet, who did he not invite? Now, as we learned, we went, I don't know if people were not invited as much as who was there. Who did he take the time to personally invite? And last week, we took a look at the shepherds. If you missed that, newbranch.net's our website. Go back and look at it because there's characteristics of the shepherd. If you want to be included, if you want to have what they had and be able to celebrate the way they could celebrate, you got to have those characteristics. They're pretty important. Today, though, we're going to take a look at a different piece. It's something that I truly believe that God has been pressing me with. So this message wasn't necessarily meant for you. It's something that in my quiet time, over and over and over again this year, I've been seeing a pattern that God's been pushing on me. And today I would like to share it because it's the same pattern that I see in this part of the Christmas story. And so I want to share this with you today. Not a word from me, but a word from God. Having said that, here's what I want to say. This, to me, is one of the weirdest parts of the Christmas story. I've never seen a weirder part to the Christmas story than the part we're going to share today. So last week, we kind of knew, just to brief you, that Christmas is really a celebration of the birth of God's one and only Son, Jesus Christ, to save the world from their sins, that later he would die on the cross for the sins of the world. And that's really what the Bible is all about. And we celebrate that because he sent his one and only Son to be born of a virgin who he told her, but as we've read in the Christmas story, he didn't tell anybody else. The Christmas story is kind of a very weird story if you think of it that way. So it's like, hey, it's great. You're going to have the one and only Son of God. You're not married. You're going to have his son first, and then you're engaged to this great guy. But the good news is you're going to have the baby Jesus. The bad news is I'm not going to tell anybody else. Okay. Anyway, and then later Joseph finds out, and then they have to go to Bethlehem. I don't think they realized they were fulfilling prophecy, but they had to go to Bethlehem to have the baby because there was taxes. So taxes are part of the Christmas story. They're part of our lives today. And so if you're struggling with taxes, I have a feeling Mary and Joseph would say, I'm right there with you, because baby Jesus was born in a barn because there was no room. And I think part of it was he's a young adult, and Marie always says he's like you didn't make reservations before, and this is what you get, okay? And so now forever, Joseph, you are known as the guy that let baby Jesus be born in a barn. And then he was lying in a manger, which is basically a feeding trough. So it is a very strange story when you think of it that way. But it fulfilled prophecy, which is huge. The next part of this story, though, if you want to read the Christmas story, because maybe you never read it that way, but go back and look, and it's exactly like that. It might say a little bit more poetic, but that's exactly what it is. Luke chapter 1 and 2, Matthew chapter 1 and 2. Take some time and read the Christmas story this year. Here's the part we want to cover today. Matthew chapter 2, it says this: after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi came from the east to Jerusalem. Verse 2, and asked, where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. We'll go back just to verse 2. Just want to focus on this part just for a second. Who are the Magi? I'll be quite honest with you, it is the weirdest part of the story that there is. Most of us think of it as there's a manger scene and the shepherds come and then the wise men. That's not exactly how this is. It's believed that Mary and Joseph, because taxes took so long, and they do today, that as they're auditing everybody, they had to actually get a place to stay at in Bethlehem, and it's believed that they came 6 months to 18 months after the birth of Christ, almost randomly. Now, who are they? Who are the Magi? Because we're going, these people just, if you read the story every Christmas, you're going, oh, that's kind of cool. But if you actually stop to think about it, you're like, well, where did they come from, right? There's not a lot of information, believe it or not. We really don't know too many details. I'll tell you what the scholars think, because I think some of this is just kind of cool. So those of you that don't like trivial information, get over it, because it's Christmas time and I get to do something I want, so I'm just going to share this with you, okay? So there you go. So let me share just a little bit of trivia with you. The Magi are basically, they're advisors to the king in ancient times. They're some of the smartest people on the planet. They were gifted in the areas of astronomy, astrology, religion, politics, They were absolutely amazing. Science, medicine, you name it. They would have Magi for everything. Today we would probably call them like cabinet members and things like that if they're smart. I don't know, but government bureaucracy. They're not exactly like that. Back then they had monarchs, and they were basically like, if you're not smart, we just kill you and we find some new ones. And that's what they did. A lot of them were taken, and we learned that during the time of Daniel in the Old Testament, that Daniel was actually taken as a Magi. But they typically were the best and the brightest of whoever they were. Through history, we learned that they also became king makers. If you want some conspiracy, they were actually deep state, okay? I mean, that's not really a joke. I mean, they really were deep state. They were the ones that were the kind of the force behind the scenes, the smart people that were kind of moving things around. That's who they were. Not necessarily these guys. But these guys, it's believed that they came from Persia and possibly Babylon, which are today Iraq and Iran. The journey for them, if they did come from that region, would have been about 800 miles, which is a pretty lengthy trip when you're thinking of an entourage that's bringing stuff with them, and they did bring some stuff with them. The journey would have been hard. Think of it like walking from here to Orlando. That's basically the distance that they would have came. For us today, with technology, it takes about 10 hours to drive to Orlando. And for me, when I ride with my wife, it takes about 7 hours. So I don't know what that means, but anyway, there you go. I can actually ride with Marie faster than we can fly. So there you go. And except through Emporia. We always get stopped there, and there you go. You can ask Marie about that later. So that's where they came from. The question then becomes, how did they hear about this? You ever thought about that? How did they know? These are not Jews that lived in Babylon. These are people that were a totally different ethnicity. They were a totally different race. They were not, and back then, really the only people following Jehovah God was people that lived in Israel. But I think here we see that that's not really true. That one of the things that I think is a side note, and maybe it's a main note for someday, is to say that God not only cared about Jewish people, there are people that follow God all over the world. It might not be a lot, but there are people that follow God all over the world. And the Magi were actually some of them. Now, I personally believe, and we go, hey, what is the star? Some people believe it's a planet, a kingly planet that moves around. It could be many different things. We do know this, that it wasn't just a fixated star, otherwise everybody would see it. So we kind of show it in our story like this thing brightens up over top of the thing, over top of the manger scene, but that's not exactly accurate only because nobody else mentioned it, right? I mean, the shepherds didn't go, what is that bright star? Nobody else did. So it had to be somebody that really studied the stars, and they were really looking at it and knew. So how would they know about any of the prophecies about Jesus? My only link to that is that possibly Daniel left that because he was part of ancient Babylon and Persia. I truly believe that's probably their link. They actually had a version of the Bible, it's called the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament that was left in Babylon and Persia. And so that's possible that they followed that. So anyway, that's just a side note. That was for me. Thanks for listening. And we'll get back to the story. So they come here, and I have a feeling after traveling 800 miles like you're going, and just like I mentioned Disney World, if you drive to Orlando, you know what happens when you get to the Florida state line? You cannot miss Disney. Is that true? I mean, if you've ever been to the airport in Disney, have you ever been there? It's like, it is nothing but Disney, right? I mean, like Orlando is Disney. So it's like, you don't need directions. Everything on the road leads you to Disney World. I have a feeling that's what they thought. We are coming to see the greatest king that's ever been born, and we think, because we're following this, that when we get to Jerusalem, where the king of Israel lives, he would definitely know, right? Wouldn't that what you would think? Let's see how it goes. Verse 3. When the king Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Is that kind of what you thought? He's disturbed because he didn't know about it. Interesting, right? I have a feeling they think it's interesting too. Like, we came from 800 miles and we knew about it. We're not Jews and we knew about it. How come you guys don't? Verse 4. When he had called together all the people, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and he asked them where the Messiah was to be born, verse 5, in Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet was written. So it's basically like, where was that? And they go back, they pull out the scroll. Oh, it's in Bethlehem. See, these guys knew it. These guys weren't even looking for it. Verse 6. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So they had the prophecy. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. If you could circle something for me, circle the word secretly. Whenever you see that, that should be an indication for somebody. I'm not saying that all secrets are bad. I'm not saying that some things can't be confidential. What I'm saying is when people call you aside with something big like this, that should be a flag. That should make the hairs on the back of your neck step up when you're only as sick, believe me, as your secrets. And Herod was a very sick man. If you want to know more about Herod, we actually did a message series 2 Christmases ago called, it was basically like Christmas the Villain Edition, which I really enjoyed. And we actually had the Grinch and stuff, and it was kind of fun. And but then we delved into the life of Herod. If you want to know more about him, maybe listen to that series. It was kind of cool. Verse 8. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." Even if you've never heard the Christmas story before, does anybody think that he wants to go and worship the baby? I'll just give you one side note about Herod. Herod was not a true Jewish person. He was actually appointed there as a regent for himself, and he was a king that was all about himself. Now, most people think he wanted to kill the baby so that somebody didn't usurp the throne. He was an old man, so by the time the baby was grown, he would be dead. You know why he didn't want the Messiah? Because he didn't want it written that Messiah was born then because it would trump his legacy. That's a sick person, isn't it? He's all about himself. He's that narcissistic. Did you know there's people like that in the world? You know there's people that they will suck the fun out of Christmas? Is that true? I mean, like the greatest event, and all they can think about is them. Do you have anybody like that in your life? Okay, we'll get to that in a minute, okay? Verse 9. After they heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. The reason why I say the star moved is just because I just read that. Okay, there you go. Verse 10. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. This is important, okay? They got their focus back, right? They had Herod, kind of sidetracked them a little bit, kind of a weird experience there, and then they saw the star, and they got right back on track. That's very important. Verse 11. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and they worshiped him, and then they opened their treasures to present him with the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They worshiped him. Now, can I tell you something? I don't know if other people were worshiping him that day, but it doesn't tell you they were. Do you understand these guys traveled almost 900 miles in ancient times to come here, and they didn't wait in line? Now, let me tell you something. We drove to Disney World, same amount of distance, and you know what we did? Somebody here said, you just guys have just been, right? Well, let me ask you a question. Did you wait in line? I mean, like, that's what you do in Disney, right? It's so spectacular. Why are there not people lined up? Can I tell you why that's so important in this story? The intentionality of this is so important, that there were people that these guys got to experience the most spectacular event in the history of mankind, yet there was people living right next door that had no idea that this was happening. Can I tell you that some of us, we have the same power, same thing today, but here's the problem. Some of us are going to miss it because we don't have this right. And today we're going to share it with you because we don't want you to miss this, okay? They got to worship him, and then they presented him with treasures. I won't get into each treasure because I don't know that you'll find this interesting, other than it was gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And my point is, they were kingly gifts. They're expensive. They were on purpose with a purpose. These guys didn't come empty-handed. They came here intentionally. They got to worship Jesus. And believe it or not, I believe for those 6 months or 18 months, there was not many people worshiping him. But these guys got to. Verse 12. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country another route. They didn't get entangled with a toxic person. That's a great message for Christmas. So what can we learn from the Magi? There's a lot of things I believe we can learn from them. But what I want to do today is this. I simply want to give you the ingredients to having the best Christmas ever. But here's the part that I want you to see, and this is what I think God's been working me over on, is you have to have all the ingredients. okay? This is important. And if you're not careful, and I really want you to write these things down when we get ready to introduce this, because if you don't have all the ingredients, it will not work. And some of us are trying to make it work, and the reason why we're disillusioned about things is we only have one of the ingredients, and it's not going to work unless you have all of the ingredients. It's kind of like baking a pie at Christmas. My sister-in-law, who's not here today, so I can share this. Hopefully she doesn't watch it online later. I'm just playing. She knows I got permission to share this. But anyway, several Christmases, like 20 Christmases ago, she baked a pie, and she forgot to put an ingredients in. You know what ingredients she forgot? Sugar. Have you ever ate a pie without sugar? It was not good. And by the way, you can't add it later. We tried that. You know, it's like you pour it on top. Okay, it just doesn't work. Anyway, it's kind of funny. So, Amanda, you can tell her that later. Okay, anyway. All right. Why am I saying that? The same is true of your life. And the reason why I want to share this today is when I share it, it may not seem so profound, but it may be that God uses this in the same way in your life as he has been in mine, that as I miss these ingredients, I have to come back to this recipe again and again and again, because if you don't get this, you're going to be half-baked. Okay, I'm serious. For Christmas. Your life is going to be half-baked. Some of you, that's exactly where you are. You are trying, but there's something missing, and today, God is going to give you the keys. But you got to get them right, and you got to get them in this order, okay? All right, you ready? Okay. That was a little anticlimactic, but that's okay. Are you ready? Okay. How to have the best life ever. 3 things. I want to focus on the last one first, but I'll go ahead and give them all 3 because they're up on the screen. You're already writing them. Okay. Number 1, focus. Number 2, follow. Number 3, flow. I put them all up because we got to talk through it in a certain order, but I need to talk about the last one first because it's where we default. Flow. Now you might be going, what are you talking about? Flow means this. So I just have to kind of describe what I mean by flow. Flow means when life is just flowing. You know what I mean by that? Like, we've been watching a lot of Disney Plus right now because Mandalorian and stuff, but anyway. But there's also other ones that Marie makes me watch, and it helps me not have to watch Hallmark, so anyway, that's good for me. Scariest part of Christmas, Hallmark movies. Okay. But anyway, so it flows, right? And what do we mean by flow? Like, if you watch The Lion King, which we just watched that one, you know, when they have that moment where it's like, you know, can you feel the love, you know, and that kind of thing. And so they're like feeling the love, and it's like, you know, the whole world is new, and the whole world is exciting, and we're all just feeling this feeling. That's flow. You know what I mean by that? It's like, that's what we want. When you think of Christmas, like, I just want to feel that. I just want that moment. And some of us are just like, I just want to be able to pay this bill or whatever. Anyway, but the point is, it's like, man, you know, it's just like everything is just flowing. You know, if you fall in love, it's like flow. When you come in a relationship with God, believe it or not, people flow. Now, the problem with religious people is they think, well, because I'm flowing right now, then now all my problems are gone. I finally figured out life. I just went from one experience to the next, and now that I had this experience, I'll never have any problems again. Anyone? Anyone under that delusion? If you are, that's okay. Just write down these notes. You'll need them, okay? Believe me, okay? Because it don't work that way. Because life will flow, and I don't want to take anything away from it because it's on the list. But here's the problem. What do you do when it stops flowing? Not if, when. And if you get this right, let me tell you something. God's going to give you a formula. God is going to give you the formula for keeping your life on track. God is going to give you the ingredients to have joy that will never leave your life if you get this right. You don't have to be afraid. Because many of us are, right? Because some of you guys have had that. And once you had flow and then you lost it, right? Anybody ever been going down the river of life and go, hey, it just takes you there? Anybody think that? Anybody think culture takes you there? Right? You ever been through cultural things and you get to the end of that river and you're like, man, we're flowing pretty good like whitewater rafting. And then you get to this huge waterfall, you know, and you're like, whew, that wasn't good, right? And then it smooths out a little bit and you're thinking, oh, it's flowing pretty good right now, but I'm kind of scared that's going to happen again. Or you hit a rock, or you're out of the boat. What do you do? Today we're going to help you with that. It's not that flow is bad, it's that that's not all you need. There's something else. And you got to get the first 2 right. And the Magi understood it. So let me help you with it. Number 1, the first thing you got to have, and you have to have it before anything else. Number 1, you have to have the right focus. Focus. How important is focus? Anybody think of that? Do you know where you're going? Or do you just think that life will just work out? Sometimes it does, and then it doesn't. Well, let me ask you a question. Does it work out in any other thing? If you shoot or you do archery, anybody think that you'll hit the target without aiming? If you don't aim, you know what you'll hit? You'll hit nothing every time. I can guarantee it. Now, that doesn't mean you can't randomly. You can spray and pray, and what happens? You'll eventually hit the target, but you can't group it. And some of you, that's right where you are, right? You hit the target one time, and it was flowing pretty good, and then it wasn't, right? And you're going, but I have no reason. I don't really know why I hit the target, so I can't repeat it. So it must just be some random thing, and maybe life will just get me there. And no, it won't. It has to do with focus. What do you focus on, right? Even the Cheshire Cat understood that, right, in Alice in Wonderland. Remember what he said? If you don't know where you're going, it really doesn't matter much how you get there. That's kind of my interpretation of it, right? Any road will lead you there, right? So do you know where you're going? Do you have a focus? And what you're focused on, that is where it will direct your life. I learned that when we go skiing. If you snow ski, and we're getting kind of excited about that this time of year, so when you snow ski, wherever your eyes go, that's where you'll go. Maybe you didn't know that. So that's the first lesson. Actually, the first lesson is this: learn how to fall down. That's very important in snow skiing. Second one, wherever your eyes are, be careful, because that's where you're going to drift to. You know when we really learned it? On the back of a boat. Somebody let us borrow their boat. Some of you guys might have heard this story, but I'm just going to tell it again. And that is, we learned when we were kneeboarding, when you jump on a kneeboard. Very important to know this part. I was used to water skiing, so there's a whole different way of jumping on water skis than kneeboarding. And so one, don't pull the person so fast. My wife was pulling me extremely fast, way faster, like it's about as fast as the boat could go. I was 50 pounds heavier, and I hit the wake to jump, and I got about probably this much air, which is pretty incredible for me. And it was pretty incredible for the people in the boat. They were really shocked and awed until I landed, which I landed because I looked down, and the kneeboard went like, instead of going like this, it went like this. And I went in, like it actually went in backwards and then hit me in the back of the head, and I went about 6 feet underwater, and I was like, hey, you could actually get hurt in the water. I didn't know that, okay? But I learned it that day, okay? And then we watched a video to say, hey, how do you jump on a kneeboard? I don't know if I want to again, but let's find out how. And they said, hey, what you do is you pull back on the rope, and then you let out as you jump. But the most important part, okay, first off, slow the boat down a little bit. But second, most important part, wherever your eyes go, that's where your board goes. Now, that was helpful. So if you look down, your board's going to tip down. If you look up, your board's going to tip up. You understand what I'm saying about focus? Where are your eyes? That's where you're going. That's where you're going. And if you don't know that, you'll think you'll just flow, and then you'll get to a moment like that on the kneeboard, and you'll go, oh, I don't want to do that again, right? But that's not the lesson that God wants you to learn. What he wants to do is you got to get your focus right. Even before you follow, because if you don't have the right focus, you can't follow. We'll get to that, okay? Focus. Who did the Magi focus on? Can I tell you who they focused on? They focused on Jesus. And that took intentionality. You didn't just show up 900 miles away. Now, last week's lesson was great, and the shepherds got to flow, okay? I don't know what they did after that. Hopefully, they had that take over their life. But it isn't just from one experience to the next. The wise men, the Magi, are the ones that we look at to say, how come they came? Because they were intentional. They were intentionally focused on Jesus. That's why they ended up there. That's why they got to experience Christ when no one else did. And they worshiped him. But it all came as a result, the focus. Day after day after day, when you travel 800 miles, you have to keep your focus. You have to keep checking back in with the star, kind of like you would when you are, when a plane travels, it's never really on course. It keeps checking back in with the tower. That's where your focus is. When you stop flowing, you stop and you have to focus. You have to refocus. Now, why did I say that about following? Because if you follow without being focused, you're going to burn out. If you're burned out today, you don't have the right focus. That's a fact. Ooh, that's kind of tough, isn't it? I just saw the look on your face. It's probably the same one I had. But it's so important to know that. You see, if you don't get this right, what you're going to do is you're going to go, I'm going to do for Jesus, and then you're going to burn out, and you're going to go, this just doesn't work. I did this for all these people and they don't even appreciate what I did because you have the wrong focus. You got to get your focus right. And can I tell you the hardest part about focus is this. Your flow will stop when toxic people come into your life. Is that true? In everybody's Christmas story, there is a Herod. Did you know? You can write that in the sideline, okay? You can be guaranteed. There is a Herod in every Christmas story. He is waiting to ruin your Christmas. You want to know what we call him? We call him family. No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. My in-laws are here. I got to be super careful today. Just kidding. Not you guys. Of course not. No, I'm just playing. Anyway, sorry. Right? Who am I talking about? I'm talking about fun suckers. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, man, your life could be going great, and then they come into it, and they just ruin everything. And I'm telling you that because some people don't expect that. And you're going, I would be happy, but Herod, right? You see, I would have went to Israel, but it's Herod's fault because when I got there, he was trying to do something bad, and he was trying to do something secret, and he didn't even know about Jesus, and blah, 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 the king of Israel. And you could have been stuck, or you could be stuck protesting Herod. You know some Christians do that all the time? Instead of living out their faith, they're busy protesting for their faith, I guess. And they get so wrapped up in arguing with the devil that they're not doing any good for God. You know why? Because they have the wrong focus, and the devil gets it, see? Satan understands it. If I can get your focus on him, you'll never get to Bethlehem to do it. And see, what some of us are doing is, you're waiting until all the Herods are gone, and then you go, well, once I get done with all of my resentments and all these bad things and all these bad toxic people, then I'll finally worship God. And the answer is this: you'll never worship God in this life because there's a Herod in everybody's story. My question for you is this: are you going to let them rob your joy? Pay attention to what the Magi did, because there's a reason why they got to worship, and so many people in our church today, including myself, sometimes miss it because we don't have our focus right. You think it's just going to flow? You think, I'll just wait till all the bad stuff is gone and then I'll finally worship God. That's not what they did. You don't think they had struggles along the way? They had a huge struggle right here. And what did they do? Pay attention to what the wise men did. Pay attention to why they were wise men, Magi. The reason why they were those people is this: as soon as they left Herod, they felt like they needed to take a bath. That's probably true, because he was a sleazy politician type. And as they left, they got their eyes right back on the star. Is that what you do? What do you do when you encounter toxic people? Do you get involved in an argument with them, or do you refocus on God? When you see that person around your Christmas table and you're just taking, oh, here they come, right? What do you do? What are you going to do this Christmas? Can I give you a clue? Don't keep trying to go. Pause and refocus on Jesus. And it's going to change your life. If you ever get this, you are going to have the keys to the kingdom. Because what it means is you're not focused on your circumstances, you're focused on Jesus. And after all, isn't that what Jesus tried to teach? In fact, next week, we're going to spend a lot of time next week, or at least 15 minutes next week, okay, on the video message online talking about this. How to do it. We're going to talk in 3 messages this year about how to truly hear from God and how to focus on Him. That's truly what prayer is. Or did you think prayer was you telling God what to do? That's ridiculous, right? The God of this universe, you're telling Him how to handle everything? Let Him speak into your life. You got to get your focus right. Focus on Jesus. Refocus on Jesus. And I'm telling you, it will change your life. After you focus, what do you do next? You know what they did next? They followed. After you focus, then you follow, in that order. You get your focus right. If it ever breaks up, you don't continue to try to follow. You stop, you refocus, and then what? Anybody that shoots understands this part, right? You focus, and then you pull the trigger, okay? But then you got to pull the trigger. Now, some people are all just focus groups. That's what the problem was in Jerusalem. You're focused, but you never do anything. You're not blessed. Last week we talked a little bit. You're not blessed by knowing God's word. Did you know that? You're blessed by doing God's word. In fact, it says if you know God's word and you don't do it, you're worse off by knowing it and not doing it. That's the problem with a lot of church stuff. It's like we study. We're just going to think about it. No. You refocus, and then you follow. It just simply means doing what God said. What did they do? They intentionally came 800 miles. They faced every obstacle. It took discipline. It took intentionality. The problem with the flow lifestyle is this: it doesn't take intentionality when most needed. You focus, And then you follow, which takes discipline. Now in the South, discipline can kind of mean punishment. That's not what we mean. We mean discipline means practicing the disciplines of the faith, meaning it doesn't just happen. You have to be intentional. Are you following? They followed Jesus. They followed him right through Herod. The other part about follow is this. It cost them something. Did you know? Oh, salvation is free. That's right. But following Jesus, it will cost you. They brought gifts. By the way, I think there might have been a few other people that brought gifts, but there were not many gifts. Did you know? You know why? Because other people were so focused on self. And the Magi got it. They brought kingly gifts to God. Isn't that something? You know why they could do that? Because they had received the love of God first. Somewhere they had learned of the love of God, and it transformed their life, and it's the reason why they were willing to travel 800 miles and show up in a place. It's the reason why they didn't get discouraged along the way. It's the reason why they continued to refocus on God and continued to follow God, and a piece of following is that they gave. Now, why is that important? You just trying to get money? No, that's not it. I'm trying to get at the root of what's important in your life. You see, giving means that you're not hung up on holding on to everything. That's all giving is. You see, because God doesn't need our money. Did you know? He kind of has enough. In fact, he gives you everything you have. But when you have received the love of God, the overflow, right? We see the word flow? The overflow is that you're able to give. This is so important. So why am I saying that? Because here's what happens. If you're not able to give and you're holding everything like this, we're not trying to pry it out of your hands. We're not trying to talk you into giving. What I'm trying to tell you is this. Evaluate yourself. If you're holding everything like this and you can never give anything, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about yourself. I'm talking about your love. I'm talking about, do you have anything to give? You may not, because if you've never been filled with the love of God, you have nothing to give. But if you're holding it like this, it means you actually think that what's in your hand is more important than what God can give you, you see? That you actually think that accumulation is going to fill you. Anybody understand that it won't? If you don't believe that, just wait till Christmas morning. You'll get some illustrations of that with our children, right? Give them more stuff. In fact, go out today and buy more stuff. This will be a great test for you. Your kids will love me for saying this. Go buy them all the stuff that you weren't going to buy them and just charge it up and give it to them and see if they're finally happy. And let me know let me know Christmas night if they're finally happy. You know what you're going to find? The same thing that happened to me when I tried to do that in my life. And I charge and I charge and I charge, and I cannot fill myself because I was following greed, right? I was following, and I didn't think of it as greed. I just thought, if I finally get that, then I'll finally be happy. I wasn't, right? How much do I need? I just need just a little bit more. I can't do it with accomplishments. I can't do it with accumulation. The only thing that can fill my life is what the Magi found. It's Jesus. And when you get that right, then you'll be able to give. Two things to evaluate to know if you're following. This is going to be hard, but it's going to be true, and it's going to help you. You want to know if you're following? Look at your calendar and look at your checkbook. Where do I spend my time? Where do I spend my money? And that's really who you are. Don't fool yourself if you think it's not. So I'm just saying, reevaluate. It doesn't mean you have to get all the way back on track today. Get your focus right and then start following. But not following out of guilt, following out of the love of God. And as he helps you, you go, I just can't give the money I'm supposed to, or I just can't give this thing. I don't know how to do that. Then let us help you after the first of the year. We're not asking you to just write checks and do that kind of stuff. What I'm telling you is get your focus right. Start following him, and you're going to have one of the best lives ever, because here's what happens. When you get your focus right and you start to follow, then you're going to flow, right? You're going to flow in his love. This is where people want to be. This is important because why? Because what happens to the wise men? They start to flow. And you know what happens to them? They worshiped God. They experienced that. The people next door that were not focused and were not following, they were literally next door to Jesus, didn't get to experience that. And the wise men forever got to have that experience. They felt it. Do you? Or maybe you hadn't felt that in a long time. Maybe you don't let yourself feel it anymore. Because you go, the last time I let myself flow, I got down. You know why you don't have to be afraid? Because no matter what happens next, you have the formula that you don't have to be down. When life stops flowing, when you get past Jesus, after you meet with Jesus, and the next thing happens, you hit a rock and you're out of the boat, what do you do then? You know, there were some stories in the Bible, you can read about them for yourself, where Jesus actually, when they were in a boat and there was a storm, he actually walked on the storm. He didn't just calm it, he walked on it. And he's saying, get your eyes off of that stuff and get them on me. And when you do, your life will flow. And when it stops flowing, you stop, you focus, you follow, and then you'll flow again. And again, and again, and again. You have what it takes to have the best life that there is. I want to give you one last thing from the Magi. After. You see, part of the problem with the flow is this, is when we get too exhilarated, when you have a big occasion like Christmas, it builds up to that moment, and then afterwards it's almost like a hangover. You ever had that? It's like, I don't know about you, but sometimes right after Christmas, I have the greatest depression that I've ever had in my life, because it's like, hey, it was a big event, it was awesome, and now I have to go back to where it was. And sometimes that's been horrible, right? I'm trying to escape. That's what flow can be for some people. It's like, I just am trying to escape, and I have this big moment, and then when the moment's over, I don't know if I want to go on. And can I tell you, every time of the year, people come here that they're thinking, this is it. I don't know if I want to go on with my life. I've had that many times. That Christmas isn't the happiest time for everybody, and sometimes after it is even worse, and the depression comes on. But you know what I see in the life of the Magi is after they left Jesus, after they worshiped him, one of the biggest events in their lives, I have a feeling, they were still guided by God. Did you know? They still had their focus. Because it told them, hey, don't go back to Jerusalem around that toxic person, go a different route. And they avoided the problem altogether, not because they were so smart, but because they were following God. Because why? Because they were focused on him. They focused, they followed, and they flowed. So let me ask you a question. What about you? Who or what do you follow? I'll tell you where you're going. Who or what do you focus on? Who or what do you follow? And how do you flow? Answer that, and I can tell you where you're going. I can tell you what kind of life you're going to have. I believe that Jesus is inviting you into a relationship with him. And if you'll take it, he'll come in, and he'll have a relationship with you that will never end. It isn't just for a day, it is forever. And you can come back to this again and again and again, and to focus, to follow, to flow. Okay. Can I pray for you guys today? Let's stand for prayer.